Welcome back to Grace Through Storms. I'm your host, Jessica Webb. Today we have a wonderful guest, Ankur Garg.
How's it going?
Welcome.
We did try recording this once before.
I think twice before.
We had a little bit of a malfunction, but it's okay. Third time's a charm. We're going to get it this time.
Okay, so Ankur, ChatGPT says,
Uh-oh.
you are a multifaceted entrepreneur, a creative strategist.
Very correct.
A content creator, best known as the founder of AKG Creative and co-creator of FlexWork Studios.
Also very true.
Yes, and
how does ChatGPT know this much about me?
I talk about you a lot.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. It's listening.
You also have a great reputation as a leader in distributing marketing, podcasting, and digital media. Welcome.
Hey, ChatGPT only says the nice things.
Only the nice things?
Did you ask ChatGPT the bad things?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I was waiting for you to share those things.
You could just ask me in person then. Ask me whatever you want.
So that's the purpose of the podcast. So here at Grace Through Storms, we share stories, testimonials of overcoming trials and tribulations, and through the grace of God, how you have overcome those. So
can we just first talk about overcoming my wife's hatred for this blazer?
What?
I love this blazer. It's literally my favorite blazer. And she doesn't want me to ever wear it.
Well, it is salmon colored pink, but I love pink.
And I thought this was the right vibe for the podcast.
Absolutely. Anything pink can come in. Anything.
Yeah. No, I have to ask for grace whenever my wife talks about this.
Okay.
And just take a deep breath, just let it go. She doesn't mean it. It's about the blazer, not my fashion choices.
Well, they do say happy wife, happy life. So maybe you should leave that at the office.
That's where I keep it. Yeah, that is very true. It stays here on my clothing rack.
Well, I'm glad you wore it today because it's a great talking point. Yeah.
I mean, I think real men wear pink.
They do. And so we have to get your nails done to be shiny and glistening to match. They could be like a alpha male.
A manicure pedicure is definitely worth it.
Absolutely.
If there's men out there who haven't experienced a manicure or pedicure, they're missing out on life.
We can go together.
I remember the first pedicure I ever got. I thought it was like a car wash for my feet.
Wow. Because
I don't know how else to explain it in a term that like anyone in my circles would understand.
Have you ever done the one where the fish like eat at your feet?
I have, but it's illegal in this country. You're not allowed to do it over
because
here.
there's like a lot of bacteria and possibly infection.
I actually have no idea why it's illegal, but
okay,
I did it in Europe.
And how was it?
It was interesting. I mean, there's like little fish gnawing at your feet.
Okay, and so how did you overcome that?
I laughed and I was very tickled, and it kind of just was what it was.
Oh, so in your life, you feel like you've gone through trials and tribulations. One being wearing this blazer.
Yeah, I consider this a victory.
Okay.
Yeah, I hide it away from the wife, and I just wear it here. This is where I stand my ground. I can wear what I want in the studio. So
do you take on all challenges, especially in your work life, the same way?
No, I don't hide everything from my wife.
Okay.
Only my fashion choices from time to time. But I guess they call that resolve, right?
Okay.
Once you choose if there's going to be a certain path forward, you just do everything in your power to reach that finish line.
Yes.
I remember in college, they talk about it as like tunnel vision, right? You just set your eyes on one goal and there's no plan B.
Okay.
But yeah, that's definitely my motto through and through. I coined a term called reverse road mapping, and I own the trademark for this thing called the Z to A method.
Okay.
And it's literally reverse road mapping for guaranteed success. And the entire crux of it is that there's no plan B. Just
either make it or die.
And that's it.
Wow. I think I do like sink or swim, do or die. I heard it off like a TV show or something. So it's like either you're going to sink or swim. That's it.
Yeah, or like Curtis Jackson says, get rich or die trying.
Ooh, I like that. So in your story throughout your life, you've had some great successes. I know you had a business where you had like you were doing vitamins.
That's right.
And what was the name of the company?
Shredz.
Shredz. And you had some point in your life you were at the pinnacle of your career, and then you decided to walk away.
Yeah,
How
all that
did that
happened.
work out for you?
So I guess it was an interesting culmination of things in my life. I had all these life experiences, whether I was a tutor, whether the college degrees that I had, whether it was being a athlete both in high school and in college, whether it was like the clubs I was part of or the Greek life I was part of. There was just all this life experience that brought me to a point where when this idea of influencer marketing came about, I had my first foray in products and selling products. And so those are those vitamins that we're
Okay.
talking about: protein, fat burners, multivitamins, creatine, all that great stuff that you see people pitching every single day on
Okay.
Instagram, TikTok, and the like. So it was a cool journey where every problem that an entrepreneur faces, I got hit with across every possible turn and moment that an entrepreneur is going to deal with. But I had
Okay.
answers
Mm.
because of my life experience before it.
Okay.
So something like, all right, well, it's time to build a website. Well, I knew exactly where I was going to go to buy the website. I knew what I was going to pay. I knew how to get it for free. I knew how to do
Mm.
like all these other things that most people just don't know how to do. Like something as simple as registering a business. Some people will go hire an attorney. The attorney will be like, yeah, for $3,000, I'll register your LLC or whatever, right? I mean, these attorneys will just make up a random number. It's $80 in the state of New Jersey to
Yes.
register an
Very,
LLC.
very easy.
It is free to get an EIN from the federal government.
Mm.
So what are you paying $3,000 for?
Okay.
It-
Absolutely.
So it was just scenarios like that where I had answers to every possible problem. And when you have all the answers, you're on a rocket ship, right? Because
Okay.
it's like having a cheat code to every possible problem on a test. So Shredz quickly became my greatest success in life. I think we had over 150,000 documented weight loss transformations,
Okay.
which is an unreal amount of weight loss transformations. I think I would almost rival Richard Simmons, if you remember who Richard Simmons is.
Of course,
Yeah.
I know who Richard Simmons is.
Yeah. Well, you're much younger than me, so I don't know. But
Okay.
um, this idea of this huge success with all these lives that I was able to help touch, be a part of the solution, it all went away when I decided that it was time to walk away. And it was time to walk away because the work environment got a little toxic for me due to issues I had with my partners.
Okay.
And I mean, we don't have to go into crazy details, but it stopped being the company that I fell in love with building, right? And it started becoming a place that I hated being at every single day.
So do you feel like because of your life in terms of your sports and love of exercising, that was the route you took in terms of the vitamins and the creatine and everything?
No, no.
Absolutely not.
I think this idea of like exercising had weird tranches in my life where it would appear and be passionate and then disappear, right? I got my amateur boxing card in Pittsburgh when I was there for 3 years of my life. I played sports in college and in high school, and there were stages in my life where I gained a tremendous amount of weight from
Okay.
from stress and everything that goes with it. In fact, at Shredz, I had imposter syndrome. I felt like, how could I be a executive of a huge supplement company and not have a six pack?
Mm,
And so I even started taking human growth hormone and a variety of other products to try to help me melt away all the fat.
really?
Yeah. And I mean, I wasn't taking like hardcore steroids or anything like that, but it was one of those things where I was very self aware that everyone around me had a six pack. And I did everything I could to try to match
Okay.
the room that I was in. But supplements and selling supplements kind of fell in my lap. It was a cool opportunity where I had someone approach me asking me to design a label for a product. And I'd never done that before. And as a creative and as an artist, you want to see your work, right? Like you want to see something that you've done on a billboard in Times Square. You want to see something that you've done tangible in your hands. And it was just a cool opportunity for me to do something. So I did it. And then one thing led to the next. And it was like, what else can you do? I'm like, oh, I could build websites. And then, okay, what else can you do? Oh, I could do photos and I could do this and I could do that. And kind of just turned into this long-term overnight success.
So it was like you felt like the things that, like you said in the beginning, the things from your past kind of led you step by step into something even greater.
For sure. Yeah, all my failures prior, all my learnings, my lessons from prior gave me all the answers
Mm,
when those problems were represented to me in this opportunity. And so losing it all and walking away was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. I probably only had to do one thing that was even crazier, but that's a different story. And you lose yourself, right? You go from being worth, I mean, for conversation's sake, nine figures in
okay.
like
Yeah, I was gonna
abstract.
ask you at what point do you feel like you reached the height of the height for you in that business?
Yeah, I think my partner and I would have admitted that we were worth over 100 million each, based on our individual equity in the company and everything that happens there. And when I walked away, I was in debt. There were debt collectors, there were personal guarantees I'd put on things, all sorts of stuff that was on me. And I had to come up with strategies and ways to pay off my debt so I could get back to zero.
Mm.
And I
And
spent
let's stop there. How do you go from being on paper worth $100 million, right, to being in debt?
well, it's not pretty. I can tell
Okay.
you that. And value and valuations and what you're worth, I mean, sometimes they're arbitrary numbers, sometimes it's based on company sales and revenue,
Okay.
but revenue doesn't always mean profit. And then there's ways that you look at things in different structures where sometimes people will talk about their revenue over multiple years. Sometimes they'll talk about it in a short like time spurt or like, whatever it is that they're calculating. So how do you go from losing that type of money and that type of lifestyle? You become a shell of who you were before, especially as a man. I mean,
Mm,
for us, being a provider is such an important part of our identity. That went away from me,
mm.
right? And you feel guilt, you feel regret, you feel anger, you feel sadness. There's really no changing that path of grief that you have to go through. And I mean, I'd be lying to anyone if I said I didn't miss that level of money and success and
I'm
everything
sure.
with it. The power that comes with the ability to use that money. I mean, it is something special. And
Do you think at any point you felt like you were being punished because you lost everything?
mm, so I think karma is a huge thing in my religion of Hinduism. And I mean, everyone kind of believes in this idea of karma overall, right? There's like a scorecard of like things that you do right and things that you do bad in life. Did I think I was being punished? I think I thought I was a bad person.
Okay.
I think I thought that there were people who lost their job because I couldn't save them. I think there was vendors who lost money because I had made promises that I couldn't keep. I think there were people who trusted me to protect them, but I couldn't protect.
Okay.
Employees, romantic partners, family members, so on and so forth. And so letting all those people down, I kind of put myself on the same playing field as what a murder is, right? Like at some point you're labeled a murderer forever. And you had done something that was this bad. I felt like I affected over 200 people's lives by not being the solution. And so I thought that was in my negative scale, and I had to find a way to either fight back and even my scales learn to live with it and just be that bad person in my brain for a long time, or there really wasn't a plan B, right? Those are the choices I had in front of me.
You know what? I noticed like a lot of times we watch TV shows or hear on the news where people lose significant amounts of money and then they end up doing things to themselves that they can't come back from.
Yeah.
And so you're here today, which is amazing. Do you feel like you ever struggled with any I mean, you said you internalized a lot of the loss, but do you feel like you struggled with anything that made you feel like you shouldn't still be here?
So when you have that type of money, you tend to have people that are advising you on life. And I had a really large insurance policy on my life.
Okay.
And I remember there were definitely nights where I thought, well, if I just off myself, everyone's whole. Every single
Mm,
person would get paid. There'd be no
wow.
more debts. And, my balance would be at zero, right? I literally wrote out a will and I wrote how much money goes to every person that was in my mathematical mind would make each person whole for what I had cost them.
Wow.
There were employees or ex employees that would have gotten 2, 3 years of salary. There were family members where I'd calculated out, like, if they got married and had kids, this is what their college tuition would cost, and so on and so forth. I literally had this whole Excel spreadsheet written out,
Wow.
and the policy covered all of it. And then there was still money left over. So I was like, okay, great. This can go to the ones who'd missed me the most, right? My parents, my whatever I had left of friends at the time, so on and so forth. And I just, I realized it was very dumb for me to think that way, because if I had asked any one of those people on this list, what would they prefer, that money or me in this world? Anyone who mattered would have said me in this world.
Absolutely.
And so I shredded that spreadsheet, and I never even opened it again after that. I kept the insurance policy as long as I could. It did eventually lapse because there were some hard months where payments couldn't happen and stuff like that. But it was uh, it was definitely a dark moment for sure when you're thinking that way. So after that is when I realized, like, no one's gonna come save me. I got to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
And I moved to Pittsburgh because I had an opportunity to get away from New Jersey, which in all its glory can either be the greatest place on earth, or it could be the worst place on earth. All right. And so getting away from this area that had so much trauma from broken relationships, broken friendships, broken partnerships, so on and so forth, it allowed me to clear my head. And I started chipping away at the
Okay.
debt. I started chipping away at the lack of belief in myself. Started chipping away at, am I a bad person? And it took a very, very long time before I gave up on the notion that I'm a bad person.
And how did you do that? Like, did you seek a higher power? Did you pray? Did you read self-help books? Like, how did you get to that point?
Yeah. So I think seeking a higher power has so much of, like, the reassurance aspect of it, right? And
Yes.
hope aspect of it. It's a little different for Hindus. And I think at the end of the day, did I, like, go to a temple and pray for someone to help solve my problems, or did I go to a temple and pray for strength and so on and so forth? I didn't do any of that.
Okay.
I remember there being these really huge faith based influencers that would talk about, if you pray to God for strength, is God going to make life easy, or is God going to put something that's troublesome in front of you so you could display strength?
Absolutely.
If you pray for money, is God going to just hand you money, or is God going to get you a job where you're going to have to work your butt off to get that money from that job? And so I think God put me through the ringer, and I think he knew I could figure out, or she, whatever we think God is, right? That I could figure out my own way through it.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just like, bruh, like, I think that's enough. Like, you don't gotta test me any further, right? Like, I think I've hit the full tolerance of what I needed to go through. But I mean, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think I'm strong enough, but, like, what
Yeah.
doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And one day at a time, one conversation at a time, apologizing to anyone and everyone I hurt, asking for forgiveness, and then honestly, understanding how I view forgiveness was a
Okay.
huge part of this.
Okay.
A lot of people we'll talk about love languages and how everyone receives love differently. I think everyone receives forgiveness differently too.
Absolutely.
So I had a baseline that had to be met before I even thought it was okay for me to ask for forgiveness.
Okay.
That baseline had to be like the debt was repaid. Like if I borrowed money from someone, or
Okay.
like an in-person meeting where I am emphatically apologizing for whatever I put someone through, or a podcast where I apologize to them in front of the entire world. And at that point, I'm like, okay, great. I've met my baseline for what I think is a minimum requirement. Now the other person can have expectations of what a forgiveness opportunity looks like. I can have expectations of what a forgiveness opportunity looks like, but both sides have to find a reason to make that choice and that decision. And I think after enough people forgave me, at least verbally, or, from what my understanding was, I started to believe that I was worth forgiving myself.
That's amazing because a lot of people don't do the self introspection that needs to take place when you're healing. Like you have to look at yourself, what you need, what's best for you, and how you can fix relationships on the outside. Even in the Bible, it talks about just knowing yourself, meditating on good things. And you have to do that, especially coming out of something, such a dark place mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. I can't even imagine, even now on the news, they're talking about, oh, they're calling in student loan debts. Some people have 40,000, 50,000, 300,000. You were six figures in debt and you're standing here, well, sitting here now and doing so much positive work in the community and allowing people to grow, share their stories, and how do you think you got from that point of healing to now opening so many other businesses?
Well, I think I was exhausted from growth and healing.
Okay.
And when I came back to New Jersey during COVID, it's where there was an opportunity for me to give the reins to something else. And that was a corporate gig, right? I had an opportunity to go work for someone, which
Okay.
I hadn't done pretty much ever in my life.
That's very difficult for an entrepreneur
Yeah.
to transition from being
I've had I've had bosses, but I've never been in like corporate America at this
okay.
scale, right?
Okay.
Where there's a board and there's an HR department, and I'm a plebe in comparison to everyone else. Where I'm
Okay.
used to being the number one guy in these conversations.
Wow.
So it was definitely a eye opening experience, right?
Okay.
Nevertheless, but the the beauty of that opportunity was that I got some grace from the grind, right?
Wow.
I got an opportunity to just focus on a mission, right? Purpose driven mission. It was a company trying to essentially cure some of the worst diseases on this planet through stem cells
Mm.
and science and biotechnology and everything that happens in that side of the industry. And so I was like, this is a great mission for me to get behind, right?
Wow.
And unfortunately, it didn't pin out as a super successful career move for me, but it gave me enough of a break that when it was time to start over again, I knew that one, this is the last time I'm starting over because this is probably the fifth time in my life I've had to start over. And two, I now have like 5 MBAs and everything not to do.
Okay.
Right. I have an MBA of what not to do in corporate America and an MBA what not to do in partnerships. I have an MBA in like what not to do in like manufacturing and like every aspect of this. So I literally think I have all the answers to all the questions.
Uh,
And
uh, okay, so you're like the walking chat GPT then
for sure,
of business.
100%.
Of-
100%. I think I have a gift of gab, which is like super rare and exciting. And talking to people, I'm able to make them feel like the only person in the room with me.
okay.
But more so, I've had enough life experience that I have answers to almost every problem that people approach me with.
So in the I know we talk about religion, but in the Bible there's King David. Have you ever heard of King David?
I've heard the name. Yeah,
Okay. So
I've seen the
in
cartoon.
no, but in the Bible he goes through so he starts off as a boy, they anoint him and they tell him one day he's going to be king, right? And so he's a shepherd, he becomes a musician, becomes a warrior, goes through all of these life lessons. He's on the run from the prior king, and throughout his life, he learns what it's like to be poor. He learns what it's like to be on the run. He learns what it's like to be taken advantage of. And it was like in my studying him, I realized that he had to go through all of those things to be a graceful, loving, compassionate, empathetic king. And in your story, and hearing it as many times as I've heard it and knowing who you are individually as a person, I feel like God allowed you to go through these things so that you could be a great leader. And I've seen some of the things that you've done, and I mean, you're amazing.
Thank you.
You are. I'm so proud of you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
This is a podcast that is growing. There's people that show so much love to the content that you're making.
Thank you.
I'm extra stoked that you had your son on an episode because I had the most fun watching you react to him telling you his story.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm honored to be part of the show and the experience. And if my life experience has put me in a place where I could help amplify your voice and your message and your story, then I have a responsibility to do that.
Yeah, you have some great accolades. Like even now you have your advertising company, you have some delicious spices. You even have some protein shakes still now. Like you're still doing the things that you learned about in the past, but even going forward doing even more. You want to talk about some of your spices and how did you get into that? Because I love to cook and I would love to know how to develop my own spices.
Yeah, I think when you're in like a executive role in like a
Okay.
big like any type of consumable like consumer brand, I was part of a company called Flavor God. They had some phenomenal seasonings and spices, and I was there in the product development team. I was there in the marketing team, like every aspect of it. I had great relationships with brick and mortar retail stores. I had great relationships with a variety of different influencers. And when I left, there was a gap in the market. And there were things that changed in how that company operated. I mean, I think now that everything's back up and running, they have a huge deal with Costco. If anyone who hasn't discovered Flavor God, definitely go pick up Flavor God at Costco. It's by far one of the best seasonings in the market.
Okay.
So that gap, though, were from people who didn't want to work with them anymore for whatever reason, because they only wanted to work with me, and I didn't want to compete with Flavor God because why would I? Right? I wish those guys nothing but the best in what they're doing, and it took me a long time to get there, but I'm there now. And so I went into what I consider like a wholesale area of spices, where I focused on like the 1 pound, 2 pound jars, because for me as like a user of like spice blends and everything that goes with it, the thing that upsets me the most is I never seem to have enough when I'm barbecuing.
Okay.
Right? Like if I'm making a brisket or if I'm like throwing down a feast, because I can cook really, really well.
Okay.
Uh, and
What's your specialty?
everything, everything.
Everything?
Now I've owned restaurants. I could, if I bet if I was thrown on Chopped, I would surprise a lot of people on any one of those cooking shows.
Really?
And the the goal here for me was to create a seasoning blend that was unique from anything else that I'd ever made in the past. But it would be in these large 1 pound sizes so that like barbecue people who live that barbecue life, can have one bottle that lasts them 2 or 3 cookouts.
Okay.
And I made a whole product line for it called Grilled Party Barbecue. Now, it came out during that time frame where I had gone into the stem cell world, where I wanted to take a break from the crazy hustle of everything that goes into it. And that was probably the fourth time I was rebuilding myself. But the idea is that it takes money to grow a brand from scratch, right? We've talked about this a little bit with
Yes.
some of the things that you have in mind. But you need budgets for marketing, you need budgets for inventory, you need budgets for operations. And I think in the seasoning space, you need around 150 to $200,000
Okay.
to really take off with the seasoning brand. I had maybe like $10,000.
Mm.
I had enough clout in my name to go call some manufacturers and make a couple deals and get like small batches of blends made. That then led to some sales. Those sales got me to reorder small batches, and then that was rotated for a while. I think at some point I decided prioritizing starting a family. And so I started dating more aggressively
Okay.
and spending more time and trying to find the right partner and everything that would go with that. I just kind of put the spice company on pause for a
Okay.
little bit, sold through that inventory. And I know that with my marketing agency, which, Youngry, which we talk about, I think that there are some really cool things that happen when you have an infrastructure that could support any brand you want to start.
Okay.
And so I think the agency is going to convert into being a brand house at some point in the next couple of years. And that's where I'll take Grill Party Barbecue off the shelf.
Mm.
And then I will just reinvest branding and marketing dollars from the agency. And then I'm going to give every employee shares of the company.
Wow. So what I like about your story is the Bible says that faith without works is dead. You don't have one lane. Always people are talking about millionaires never have only one source of income. They have multiple sources of income. And sometimes, especially women, we get stuck. Oh, I'm a teacher. I have to stay in that lane. Oh, I'm a therapist. I have to stay in that lane. Oh, I'm a doctor, or, I do hair. I have to stay in that lane. You are showing that you don't have to stay in one lane. You can be in multiple things and using whatever you've learned in the past to become wealthy, to get wealth, long as you're moving.
Yeah, I think every person has a unique tolerance
Yes,
for how many lanes that they can be in.
absolutely.
Right. And I think if people out there that are struggling with that decision, like, hey, should I explore a couple other ways to create wealth and so on and so forth?
Yes.
You have to go learn before making those types of decisions and taking on risk and everything associated with it. And then you have to be so self-aware of what your risk tolerance is.
Mm,
And there are low risk activities and lanes that you could test around with or experiment in. And then there are high risk lanes that you could go into.
okay.
And if you don't know what your risk tolerance is, then you got to go talk to your pastor. You got to go talk to your best friend. You got to go talk to family members, go get a life coach, right? And they'll give you those answers as to what it should be. Because I've talked to so many people that I coach and that I work with or that I'm friends with where they don't realize how low their risk tolerance is,
Mm,
right? And then they go try to do something and it fails and it crushes them,
wow.
right? Like if your podcast fails, would it crush you? Would you
I would
try
keep
harder?
going.
You would keep going.
I wouldn't give up.
And the reason we took a risk on working with you is because we could see that in you immediately,
Wow,
right?
thank
You were on a mission to do this. You had card in hand. You were like, take my money, let's do this. I've made the decision. And then I'm like, okay, like this is a force that we just have to support and mold and get to a place
Yes.
of where it can be distributed. And here we are, right? So I don't want to be that guy that's on the internet telling people like go hustle and go try 7 different things, so on and so forth. My tolerance is very high. Right? I can
Yes.
be in multiple lanes. I can compartmentalize due to my trauma. It is a skill I learned because of trauma, the
Yes.
ability to compartmentalize. And I feel like not enough people can appreciate that
Trauma.
level of self-awareness, right?
Yes.
So uh, don't look at me as like the mentor of how many lanes to be in by any means.
No, but I mean it's not like you're the person that we should be looking to, but the fact that you said it takes $150,000 to be in that area. By faith, you took your 10,000, you took your popularity or your notoriety, and you jumped out the window.
But I failed.
But you didn't stop.
Yeah. I'm, yeah, you're right.
You didn't stop, so you didn't fail. You didn't fail. You did. I owned a tutoring business in West Orange. I wanted. My father came from Honduras and very poor. Got his green card and he was like working in menial jobs. Eventually, he was able to open up nightclubs in New York. He had multiple nightclubs in Harlem. Um,
Your dad owned nightclubs in Harlem?
yes.
This explains so much.
During the Nikki Barnes era.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I knew that my father was a businessman and I was like, I want to own a business. And I prayed and I asked God to give me some money. He did. He opened up a door and I opened up a math tutoring business. It was called Mathology Tutoring in West Orange. I ran that business by myself. I was the sole proprietor and I was the only tutor there. I did it for 3 years and then I was like over it. I was like done. I was like, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, made a lot of money. I still have what, let's say 10, 15 years later, people are still calling me for tutoring, but I don't do that anymore. But it was just the fact that it was something I wanted to accomplish. I did what I needed to do. And then it was time to move on. And that's what I feel like when you try to do something and it doesn't take off the way you anticipated it to, like at least you tried to do it.
So many things I've tried to do. So many things. I think I can definitely romanticize the idea of trying.
I do too.
I just don't want anyone else to fail.
Why?
Like, it's my personal mission to help everyone not fail.
But in your failure is how you learned how to succeed.
But there's so many times that someone fails and they shouldn't fail.
Oh, so you mean like if they just had like some assistance or they had a little bit more knowledge?
Yeah, exactly.
But you learned through fail. You learned.
All I needed was an investor. But I couldn't get an investor because of other things that were going on in my life at that time.
Okay.
And that brand would have succeeded.
Okay.
There are so many other scenarios where there are amazing restaurants, amazing chefs, and they have to shut down because they don't know how to market.
Okay.
And so no one's coming to their restaurant and then they can't pay their bills. There are scenarios where people have solved the hardest problems there are on planet Earth and they fail because there's zero support.
Well, I can definitely see that point. Like if they had, but do you do this pro bono or do you get paid to help others?
Great question. Me personally, if I have the capability to help them pro bono, I will, no matter what. And then if there's scenarios where it affects team members, that's the only time where I'm going to essentially demand money for wherever it needs to happen. Now, there are plenty of scenarios where people will hire me as a consultant to give them answers to all the problems that are out there. But Harvard Business Review, they put out the study. They said 98% of businesses fail in the first 18 months. 98.
Wow.
That is ridiculous. Like, I hate that percentage and that statistic with every fiber of my being because I don't think anyone working 9 to 5 is going to change the world.
No.
Right? I think people who see a better way to do things and then have the audacity to go out into the world and try to convince people that their way is right with their wallets, those are the people that are trying to make a difference and make change happen in our community. And if people don't support those people, we're never going to advance.
I agree. While I do think sometimes failing is a learning experience, we do also need support, family members, religious background, churches, environments, even like now doing mental health. We've been talking about bringing mental health into the church and how important that is because, like you said, sometimes when people fail, if they try to accomplish things and it just crushes them. And while we can implement the spiritual aspect of it, it's still there is always or could be a mental health component that needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited to hear more stories about the people that you help through the church. And I'm even more excited about hearing the stories that you are sharing through this podcast and everything with it. But if I hadn't said it before, if there's anyone in your orbit that needs help with their businesses or needs guidance, have them reach out to me.
Absolutely.
I would be more than happy to help them in any way that I can.
Well, how would they reach you?
Well, I mean, there's the website, AnkurKGarg.com. There is the studio, FlexWorkStudios.com. I am at Ankur K Garg on every single platform. That's ANKURKGARG. Unfortunately, someone else had Ankur Garg and all the domains and all the marketing.
I was about to say.
And that jerk did nothing with it for many, many years. And I kept trying to buy it from him. And then one day he decided to become a famous Bollywood movie producer. And people don't know this, but in India, the movie scene is way bigger than it is here in the United States. Like Hollywood is nothing compared to the movie industry in India. There's just billions of people in India, right? So it just makes
billions?
Sense. Billions. So this dude has like 100 million followers on social media because he produced some really amazing movies. Okay. Movies that I thought were like glorious movies. And I hate that I like those movies so much. But now he is the Michael Jordan and I'm Michael B. Jordan. Oh. Right? But Michael B. Jordan is just as famous.
Yes.
Right? In his own right.
And handsome.
And handsome. So he and I share that in common. And I
Yes,
just kind of go with
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. To your wife, she knows.
Yeah, just not in this blazer.
Not in that blazer.
Yeah. No, but thanks for having me. And like I said, if anyone needs help with anything, I'm here to help in any way I can.
Great. Thank you. So thank you for joining in to Grace Through Storms podcast, where we share amazing stories and how they overcome through grace. If you like this podcast, please like, share, or comment. Thank you.